All right, so the first thing I want to go over today are the June 2022 US NPD results. And kind of just an update of what's going on right now. I think overall, I quickly went through it, but I kind of forget everything I read about it. I think overall, pretty much everything is similar to what it's been over the last few months. Hardware, accessories, all that stuff is falling, which I mean isn't surprising with things opening up, people not being forced to stay home anymore and going out and having to play and buy video games, or people are just doing more things. So growth in hardware and content and all that stuff falling isn't a surprise. It probably really isn't a concern for these companies either. But and this time, I think last month, even though all of the hardware and stuff fell, the growth in the subscription services and spending had offset a lot of those changes and a lot of the declines in the falling of the hardware. But this month for June, subscription spending cannot offset declines in other areas of spending, which is interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, I mean, Game Pass so far in June, I would say it's probably one of the weaker months of Game Pass. There's not a huge game. I mean, there's stuff to play. If you're somebody like me who literally plays and tries everything, there's always something to play, but there's just not a big, huge summer blockbuster game yet from Game Pass that came out in June or that I can think of. But the other thing is that PlayStation's Plus's new tiers released in June, and I guess the uptake in that couldn't offset the fall in hardware and content and accessories as well. And you would think that as a new service, a lot more people would be signing up, transferring over, because there was a thing with PlayStation Plus. If you just had the regular one, you could upgrade it to the extra or the premium version of PlayStation Plus just by paying the difference. Or for me, it was like $20 to upgrade to extra for the rest of the year till my subscription ended, I think at the end of November. So even with those new releases of the services, they still weren't able to offset the decrease in hardware and content through these subscription services. You can see here negative 11% change in total video game sales through June 2022 compared to June 2021. And overall in 2022 so far, video game spending, the consumer spend is down 10%, which again, I don't think is a big surprise when you're comparing it to 2021, just the state of the world and some of the releases that came out in 2021. It says here, first half spending total $26.3 billion, a 10% shortfall when compared to the same period in 2021. Subscription content is the only major spending category that exhibited spending growth. So the subscription content is still growing, even with the hardware falling, but not enough to offset the fall in the hardware, which makes sense because with subscription stuff, especially with Xbox, you don't have to have any hardware to be able to really, you don't have to have like a console to access the subscription, which is again why everybody in the industry is going towards this. So they don't have to get people to go out and buy console that they can't even get right now because of short supply, because of the chip shortages and all that type of stuff. They just literally have to sign up through their phone, through a PC, and they're going to be spending money in the ecosystem for that company. So that's where the trend is going. And this is something that's been, I'd say, written for a while, although people really just didn't want to face it. They really wanted to keep denying the fact that console exclusivity stuff is a way of the olden days now in terms of how the video game industry works. Like, you don't need to have console exclusives really anymore. You can have ecosystem exclusives. Those are important, but you do not need to have console exclusives to be successful. Xbox has already proven that with the success of the Series X and S, with games coming out like Halo and Forza and how well they sell on PC as well. So the console exclusive thing is dying. PlayStation knows this as well. And that's why they're doing more with PC. And that's why they're expanding their subscription service. That at a point, I feel like we're going to see that subscription service be very, 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 very similar to Xbox Game Pass. Right now, PlayStation Plus, Extra and Premium, you look at it itself as the offerings. I'm not going to lie. The offerings this month, for me personally, I thought were actually pretty good. Like, you got a bunch of Assassin's Creed games, a series that I love. You had that new Stray game that interesting if you want to play it as a cat, and people seem pretty excited for that game. Yeah, like an old Saints Row game, which if you like Saints Row, you'll check it out. It wasn't anything crazy, but the offering wasn't bad, but it's still not nearly as good overall as a service if you go look at the catalog in PlayStation Extra and Premium compared to the catalog that you have in Game Pass, especially once all of the Bethesda stuff starts coming out and all the first party stuff from Activision starts dropping in that service as soon as the deal is finished. But the service is good, and it's going to continue to improve just like Game Pass did. If you remember Game Pass when it came out in 2017, it was okay. It wasn't great. And then it just took off as it growed and more people subscribed to it. And they started dropping in the day one stuff. And I think you're going to see a similar trajectory from PlayStation in terms of their subscription services, especially if they start eventually one day, like I predict that they will put their first party games day and date into the PlayStation Plus premium subscription level. But continuing on here, in terms of hardware, the PlayStation 5 generated the highest dollar sales amongst video game hardware platforms in both June and in the first half of calendar 2022, with Switch leading both time periods in unit sales. And I forget if it must have been, I forget if in May, I think Xbox had higher dollar sales in May over PlayStation 5. And now that's switched this month where PlayStation 5 has higher dollar sales in June. So, and there was no big announcement in June because they just announced God of War Ragnarok. So that's obviously a product of just having more units out there for people to buy. June PlayStation 5 dollar sales experienced double-digit percentage growth when compared to a year ago. Okay, so, I mean, that's an interesting thing here. Because one of the big narratives people have been talking about when it comes to console, I think I'm interpreting this correctly, but when it comes to console sales in the first half, where Xbox has been outselling PlayStation, it's outsold PlayStation in a couple of weeks in Japan. Everything people would always say is, oh, it's only because there's not enough stock. There's not enough stock, which I would say that's one of the reasons, but it's definitely not the only reason. Xbox is doing really well. People want the console. They have great services. They have great offerings. That's why people are buying Xbox. And then you look at this and it's saying that their dollar sales have double-digit percentage growth than when compared to a year ago. So even if, I mean, PlayStation is still selling really well, and they must have more. The only thing I can interpret from that is they must have more. They must have more units in 2022 in the first half than they did in the first half of 2021. Because how else would you grow in your dollar sales? So they do have the inventory, but Xbox was still outselling them over these past months. So it really is, that inventory thing is definitely not the only thing that has gone into the success of sales for both these consoles, but in the last few months for Xbox outselling PlayStation, because from this, it sounds like they have, in the first half of 2022, double-digit percentage growth. Dollar sales will experience double-digit, unless that was just for June. But anyways, yeah. So they have plenty of product right now, and they're selling them. And they say here, Elden Ring repeated as the best-selling game of the month, and it remains the best-selling game of 2022 year-to-date. Elden Ring has placed first in dollar sales in 4 of its first 5 months in the market. Not surprising whatsoever. We know how insanely popular Elden Ring is, so no surprise there. And we'll see how it'll be very interesting to see how Elden Ring does next, like once Call of Duty releases, if it's still going to be selling really well, even though it's going to be a while. How many months? February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. It comes out in November, right? So it's like 9 months after its release. I think it comes out in November. So, or maybe October. But anyways, 8-9 months after its release, we'll see how well it's still selling compared to that. But it's probably going to fall off. Probably won't be leading them. But imagine how crazy that would be if it were still able to outsell Call of Duty at that point in time. But it's going to be really hard this time with it being Modern Warfare 2 for Call of Duty, which I've said this multiple times. I haven't really been excited about Call of Duty in a long time. And Modern Warfare 2 for me may potentially be a day one game for me. So Overwatch, which is going to be a Xbox Game Studios game in a couple of months, returned to the top 20 best-selling titles chart for the first time since October 2019, ranking 5th overall. This jump was driven by the release of Overwatch 2 beta, of course. That's the only thing that would have driven that, because people it's like the marketing for it is back. People are starting to think about it again with the new one coming out. Final Fantasy VII Remake, the elusive game that will never come out on Xbox. Oh, sorry. For some reason, was the 9th best-selling game of June 2022. After placing 159th in May. Why are people running out and buying Final Fantasy VII Remake right now? Why are people buying Final Fantasy VII Remake right now? Anyone know? Is there something I missed? I just realized I left that chat on there for the whole time. But is it because they announced the part 2? So people are just literally running out and buying the part 1 to play before part 2 comes out? Maybe that's it. Huh. Interesting. I don't know. Oh, I know why. It came out on PC. That's why. They released it on PC. That's probably why it's up there. That right there, I mean, that's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, I guess it says there promotional events, all that stuff, but did it also come out on PC, right? Or it is coming out on PC. I forget. But either way, like, it's crazy how that game can go from going through its sales and then going in the downwards turn, and then all of a sudden some sort of marketing thing reminds people of the game, and then boom, it increases in sales again. And hope maybe one day it will come to Xbox. If they were to put it on Xbox, eventually it will increase in sales again and maybe be up there in the list. Because people, I know for me personally, I couldn't care less anymore if it comes to Xbox, but there's still people out there who will buy it right away when it comes out. Also, Monster Hunter Rise stuff placed back in the top 20. Switch launch of Demon Slayer is number 14. So mobile. No one cares about mobile. I don't know. I don't really care about mobile. I got the top 20 there. Some more charts. Top 20 or top 10 video games in dollar sales for Nintendo. Though that was that new Mario Strikers Battle League game that's on top. What's the top 10 best selling for Xbox? So Elden Ring. Star Wars Skywalker Saga is still selling extremely well in terms of dollar sales. It was on sale, I think, maybe last month, but it was on sale right now. Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga, if you want to play that, it is on sale right now during their big summer sale thing. And Overwatch is in number 3 on Xbox. That went up from number 17. So three multi-plat games up there on Xbox as their top selling. And in June 2022, spending on video game accessories fell 15% when compared to a year ago to $176 million. First half video game accessories spending declined 14% versus a year ago to $1.1 billion. And the PS5 DualSense controller, the Midnight Black one, was June's best-selling accessory. The Elite Series 2 led all accessories in first half dollar sales. I mean, it's the best controller on the market, in my opinion, without a doubt. The Elite Series 2 literally can't beat it. I don't know if I know there's rumors about PlayStation making a Elite clone style controller, like pretty much a replica of with the features and everything as the Elite Series, and we'll see how that turns out. But yeah, the Elite Series 2 is the best controller I think money can buy right now. It's that good. And yeah, so I'm not surprised. And people use it on PC. People use it pretty much with any device that accepts it with Bluetooth and stuff, right? Even with like cloud gaming connected to your phone if you're playing games. So all in all, nothing too crazy, nothing too exciting here for the June NPD results, but spending from consumer spend on video games in the United States is down. Not surprising. That decline in consumer spend couldn't be offset by the subscription services, but subscription services are still growing. Subscription content is still growing, and that's the future of the industry. Because when you see these months where your hardware sales are down, but the subscription is going up as a company, they're all sitting there thinking, we get to offload so much of like that overhead cost of building a console, and we get to make money off of just streaming out games to people, them spending monthly amounts into our ecosystem. It's such a better business model overall for the long run for those companies. And that's where the industry is completely going. And it's something that it was talked about last week too, in terms of how cloud is going to play into this. There was an article. And one thing that is good to know from, unless this changes, is that for Xbox in particular, and I'm assuming it'll be the same for PlayStation, is going forward, they want to keep the consoles still in the market, but it's going to be a smaller percentage of people that the consoles are for. Whereas most people are going to be using cloud, most people are going to be using subscription, just streaming or downloading stuff directly to a PC or whatever. But the console is definitely still going to be a big avenue for gamers to get into the ecosystem, and they're just going to have that as a complement to, I think, cloud gaming going forward in the next 10 years or so. So it'll be interesting to see. I know for me personally, with the internet improving, cloud gaming is getting better. Xbox cloud gaming is incredible for me. I use it on my Steam Deck all the time. Really have no issues with it. But even if it's picture perfect 4K cloud streaming at some point where there's like barely any latency, I will still always prefer to have a console and download that game on the console and just play it natively. It's just my preference, and I don't think that will really ever change in terms of my preference and how I want to play games. But